Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is session E1 of our International Research Mobility Symposium 2021. And we have a really great mix of talks that you're going to hear in our session. The title of our session is Kinematic Equations, Signature Scheme, Virtual Sickness, Career Reflection. So it's really a mixed bag, but really we're hoping to give everyone a chance to highlight their research, whether at Carleton or abroad, and also just to speak about their intercultural experience and how that's impacted them. So just so everyone knows, if you're joining this for the first time, each speaker has 10 minutes and we're saving our questions for the end. So you'll have a chance to ask questions through the Q&A at the end of the session. So please hold those and be ready for a great discussion afterwards. So my name is Professor Mirja DeRosa. I'm chair of the chemistry department here at Carleton University, and I'm really delighted to be here with you all today to help run this session. My goal is to be kind of invisible and let all these great speakers have a chance to tell us all about their experiences. So why don't we get started? Our first speaker is Mirja Rotzoll, who is a MyTax Global Link supervisor, MyTax Global Link student with supervisor at Carleton and also University of Innsbruck. So before immigrating from Germany to Canada, Mirja completed her undergrad studies in industrial engineering and had 2 years of work experience in a manufacturing company and got her professional certification in software engineering. In 2018, she completed a master's in mechanical engineering here at Carleton University, and she decided to pursue her doctoral studies. Her research focuses on motion transfer of mechanisms, which are used in a wide range of applications, including laparoscopic surgical tools, robot wrists, space and aircraft systems, really interesting things. So she's going to speak to us today about a new approach for calculating kinematic equations of 4-bar mechanisms. So welcome, Mirja.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I really appreciate that. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm doing a PhD currently at Carleton University, and under the supervision of John Hayes. And in 2019, I got the chance to spend 1 semester abroad in Austria at the University of Innsbruck. And there I conducted some research together with Professor Manfred Husti. Now, as you mentioned, my research is mainly about 4-bar mechanisms and their respective input-output equations. And you might be wondering, okay, what exactly is that? So you find them in a lot of different applications, and even in robot wrists, even in your window cranks. And so they're really found everywhere. And what they are, if you could just go to the next slide, those are usually 4 rigid joints, 4 rigid links that are connected by some kind of joints. So here I have 2 pictures of them. One is a planar 4-bar linkage and the other one is a spherical 4-bar linkage. The planar 4-bar linkage, it has 4 rigid links A1, A2, A3, and A4, and they are connected by revolute joints. And the spherical 4-bar linkage, the joints, they are on the outside of a sphere, and the axis of rotation, they all intersect in the sphere. Now, what is the input-output equation? Well, it is basically some kind of correlation, some kind of equation that relates a given input to an output. So here it would be theta1 to theta2. So you're asking yourself the question, okay, what happens if I'm moving the first link and what kind of output do I get? Yeah, if you could go to the next slide, please. Now in Austria, I was working on those input-output equations, and we found like a general recipe in order to get them, no matter what kind of linkage you are giving. And what you can do is you can just consider the linkage as an open kinematic chain. So you just chop it up, and then you use those are called Dennevit-Hardenberg parameters to describe the linkage. And with Study's kinematic mapping, you can describe the position and the orientation of the end effector. So basically at the tip of this robot arm with respect to the base frame, so which would be sigma here. And that would give you a few equations. But in order to say, okay, I want to have the linkage itself. I have to close the linkage again. So the end effector frame and the base frame, they have to align. And all you have to do is set it equals to the identity matrix. You're left with a few kind of equations that you can solve with, for instance, Grüttner bases or resultants. And voila, you have your input-output equation. So that's very exciting. And in Austria, I was working on those kind of equations for this planar and the spherical one. But since then, we were also able to apply that, that process to the RRRP linkage or the RSSR linkage. So that's very interesting. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, concerning my intercultural experience. I think I should start by talking about why I was going to Austria and why I was going to the University of Innsbruck. And of course, the main thing is the expertise that is available at the University of Innsbruck. And yeah, mainly it was Professor Manfred Husti that used to teach at that university. And yeah, he's a world leading expert in kinematic mapping. So he was very, very helpful. And the special thing about him is that he's able to understand the perspective of an engineer and what engineers are trying to achieve. But his background is mathematics and geometry. So he has access to all those kind of tools that help us to get the answers that we want. So Manfred Husti, he wasn't all by himself. He's surrounded by a broader research team of a few other professors and PhD students. And I really could leverage their knowledge and yeah, benefit from their insight in kinematic mapping and geometry. And that really helped me to get a quick understanding of the math that I'm actually using today in my PhD. One of the things that I noticed that greatly benefited my learning experience is the learning environment that was available at the University of Innsbruck. The settings the PhD students were studying in. So when I arrived, I got placed into an office together with 3 other PhD students. And whenever I had any questions or I was stuck, they always helped me and like, had a good answer for me. And I think that really helped the communication, and I was able to progress really fast in my research. Not only that, also the other professors, they were always close by, and we had formal meetings, yes, but we also had daily informal meetings. So every morning and every afternoon, we were coming together, having a cup of coffee, discussing problems, or, you know, talking about where we are stuck in our research, or we were just talking about the weather or what we wanted to do on the weekends. Yeah, a final thing that I noticed was the different work organization of the PhD students that I think differs from the one that I got to know in Canada. The PhD students, they all have a regular salary and they have vacation days, but that also comes with the duty of a 40-hour weekday, 40-hour week. So they all have to work from Monday through Friday. Yeah, but that made sure that they got 40 hours that they really dedicated to their PhD, while also maintaining a very healthy work-life balance. So yeah, I was also free on the evenings and on the weekends, and I mostly used that to spend time in the Alps. And yeah, on Saturdays and Sundays, you could probably see me on my snowboard going down the mountains. But yeah, I also profited a lot from the rich culture in Innsbruck. There were a lot of museums that I was able to go to, and that was also very interesting. So yeah, thank you very much. That was my experience in Austria.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So sit tight. I think we'll save all the questions for our discussion period at the end. And I have questions, and I'm sure others have questions as well. So we'll bring you back to discuss things in the chat session at the end. Thank you so much, Mirja. Our next speaker is Gustavo Zambonin. a PhD student at the University of Ottawa. His research interests are digital signatures and quantum safe cryptography. He has a BSc in computer science from the Universidad Federal de Santa Catarina in Florianopolis, Brazil. He is also a member of the Computer Security Laboratory at this university, where he's made several contributions to the Brazilian public key infrastructure. So today we're going to hear about his work, Security Analysis of the Rainbow ADA Signature Scheme. So welcome, Gustavo.
Thank you, Professor. Well, I have also a master's from that university, recently acquired from my experience at Carleton. So, well, that was a good one, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So, next slide, please. First, a little bit about the project. Digital signatures are widely used to provide authenticity. So, whenever you make a secure connection using your web browser, you're using a digital signature, you're using cryptography, and that cryptography, especially the signatures, are based on problems from number theory, that is discrete logarithms and integer factorizations. And those algorithms are solved efficiently by one quantum algorithm by short. I mean, it's theoretical. A quantum computer does not exist in a large scale yet, but it's something that exists, so we have to be aware of that. So quantum safe cryptography aims to create public key crypto systems secure against such theoretical and probably practical in a few years quantum computers. So one of those schemes, one of those crypto systems is Rainbow. Rainbow is based on systems of equations over finite fields, which is an algebraic structure. And those equations are just a little bit structured so that they have a few variables, and we combine them in a special way to get a digital signature scheme and all the things that it provides. That is authentication, integrity, non-repudiation. And the problem with Rainbow is that while signature generation verification is very, very efficient, I mean, it's even faster than currently used crypto systems, key sizes are very large. So for example, while you browse your internet, you're constantly exchanging keys, and those keys are like bytes long. So, I mean, 300, 400 bytes, and one Rainbow key is like 100 kilobytes. So, I mean, 1 million times larger. So that's a problem we gotta solve. Next slide, please. So what we did was, as I said, large keys are a problem, especially for embedded devices too. I mean, the Internet of Things is paramount in solving lots of problems. And we need to securely, I mean, not only reduce the key sizes, but do it in a way that does not break the security of the scheme. And I mean, and limiting parameter configurations, its customization, we cannot do that. So by studying the Rainbow signature scheme, we noticed that to generate a signature, we have to choose random values, and those random values are just substituted into the private key. The private key is a system of equations, so just like we learned in high school, we just substitute some values to solve a system of equations, and we do some more stuff to get a signature. So what if those values, which are random in every signature generation process, are pre-substituted in the private key? So we have that private key, we just choose some values, we substitute them once, and store the private key in a compact way, and then reuse it for several signatures. That is called Rainbow ETA, which reduces the keys by up to 71%. So that's a big decrease, and a good step towards using Rainbow in conventional manners such as web browsing and secure web browsing and embedded devices. However, that publication has a security analysis which is not so deep and profound, so we managed to improve on that. Next slide, please. So the pre-substitution of values in the private key, a direct consequence of that is that the randomness of the signatures is not preserved. So if we collect a small number of signatures, say less than 100, and that's very easy because signature generation is very fast, and a common process, like signatures are public data after all. we can use those signatures to create an equivalent private key. So in usual crypto systems, we do not have this concept of a private key, but in the case of Rainbow, we do have this equivalent key, so we can use that through an algebraic process to create one such other key, and then use it to falsificate and forge signatures. So an attacker, malicious entity, could use a small number of signatures to collect it and to create a private key and then break the security of the scheme. So we did that. We proved that the scheme is actually insecure, so it's not suitable to be used. And that resulted in my master's thesis, and I actually created Rainbow Eta, so I created it and broke it at the same time. So that was an exercise in how do I say it, honesty and something like that. But well, at least we're not recommending it without a precise secure analysis. So that resulted in some good research about the randomness of rainbow signatures. So about my experience at Carleton, well, I had worked with a Carleton faculty member in my undergraduate, and also he was my co-supervisor for my master's too. So I already knew the idea of Carleton, and then one of Carleton faculty, Dr. Sylvia Jason, she told me about this award, this MyTech Scalario experience. So I applied to that. Before that, I tried to apply to an emerging Latin American program, ELAP, but I did not get it. So then she told me, hey, there's this other program. So well, I applied and then I got it. The only bad thing was, well, I went to Carleton at the height of the lockdown, so I arrived like in early March. So I could not really enjoy the city as I should. Well, what with the pandemic and all, but I could manage to go a few days to the university and meet some people and have some meetings, share a room with other students, and enjoy a little bit of the experience before the pandemic came crashing in. And the rest of the days I spent locked up in my home in Ottawa. But well, that also ended up with me applying to the University of Ottawa to the PhD program, and well, here I am. Not yet in Canada, but well, I have gotten the PhD student position, and well, I'm doing what I can with that. So Carleton was a very, very good experience for me. I have nothing to say but positive things about the faculty, the experience, and well, except the lockdown, even the city is very pretty. Well, I'm looking forward to live there when this whole thing ends and we can travel again. But well, I think that's it, and thanks for your time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gustavo. That was great. And yeah, I think you're not alone in kind of longing for the end of this lockdown. So I think we can share, that sentiment. Absolutely. And as I mentioned, we'll save some questions for you for the end of the session. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Let's continue. And next up, we have Fernanda Marana, who's going to be speaking to us. Fernanda was an undergrad student at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And during her 5 years of study, she worked on different research in the fields of image processing, natural language processing, and machine learning. In 2019, she had the opportunity to work alongside Professor Robert Tether here at Carleton University in the Global Link Internship Program. And their research was focused on cyber sickness in virtual reality and the alternatives to reduce the effect of motion sickness. So currently, Fernanda has been selected for the master's program at the University of Sao Paulo in the field of machine learning and data mining. And today we're going to hear a little bit about cyber sickness in virtual reality. Welcome, Fernanda.
Thank you. Hey everyone, as the introduction said, I'm Fernanda Marana. I'm a graduate student at University of São Paulo. And in 2019, I participated in Mitad's Global Link Research Internship Program. And my project was a continuation of Yasmin Sparmani's master thesis, which was also supervised by Professor Theodor, and it focused on methods to reduce the effects of cyber sickness. But what is cybersickness, you may ask? Well, it's also known as a visually induced motion sickness, and it appears when the users go inside the virtual reality and stays there for some period of time, or just keeps moving around a bit and starts feeling sick. And this happens because our brain is receiving different information from two sensory channels, our eyes and our inner ear. So, for example, I go inside the virtual reality and I start moving around, driving a spaceship, for example, and my brain and my eyes, sorry, are looking at the image and say, hey, we are moving because I'm not in the same place that I was a second ago. So they send a signal that we are moving to the brain. Meanwhile, my physical body is stationary, and thus my inner ear senses it and says to the brain, hey, we are not moving. So this conflict of are we moving, are we not moving, makes us feel symptoms such as nausea, headaches, vertigo, and others that are common to cybersickness. So many studies try to find techniques to reduce these effects and help users stay longer periods of time in the virtual reality. So can you change the slide, please? Thank you. So I focus on three techniques to work with that. The translation snapping and the viewpoint snapping were proposed in the master thesis of Yassins. And they are essentially stopping the users to see the movement of you changing your position or your rotation. What do I mean by that? Well, in the translation snapping technique, you see that someone is pointing to a place. And instead of going from this place to the other by sliding into it, when you click the button, the technique just makes you teleport to the place you are pointing at. And the same happens with the viewpoint snapping, which focus on the rotation of the user. So, for example, I'm looking at a direction and I want to rotate to the right. Instead of me rotating, having like a sliding movement and rotating, I just point to the thumb with the thumbstick of the controller, and the method simulates an effect of me closing my eyes, rotating myself, and then opening them again. So I'm not really seeing the movement, you see? And finally, I have the tunneling method, which focuses on the field of view. So the field of view is basically what your eyes can see around you. So if we reduce the amount of things that your eyes are capturing, less information they are sending to your brain. So the tunneling method makes the users, when they are moving in the virtual reality, to dynamically get the field of view smaller. And when the user stops and stays stationary, then the field of view grows again. And I wanted in my project to study these techniques, but also to integrate them and see the different combinations that they could have and what would be the performance of the users with that. And okay, so can you please change the slide? Yeah, so thank you. The activities that I conducted in this experiment were basically 4 of them. I adapted the translation snapping. So instead of you using your whole arm to point to the direction you wanted to teleport to, I just made it so you can point with the thumbstick of the controller, and then you teleport to this direction. After I adapted it, I created a platform in Unity 3D, which had some activities that you had to do. And these activities were very simple. You just have to go from point A to point B. And when you arrive at the final point or the final checkpoint, I would ask, how sick were you feeling? So as we can see in the image below, you have a rating system from 1 to 10 to check how sick you are now. So with all this data, I also decided to save them in a log file, but also I decided to measure how the users were feeling before they went into the virtual reality and after they left it. And I use a very psychological method known as sickness simulator sickness simulators questionnaire, which asks questions about if you're feeling headaches or nausea. So I had all this data collected. And it's important to note that cyber sickness can varies from person to person. It depends on your age, on your gender, on how experienced you are in the virtual reality. But the main problem stays the same. If you get sick in virtual reality, your performance drops, either if you're playing a game in VR or training in a simulation. So this was the main focus on my project. Can you please change as well? Thank you. So for my intercultural experience, I just have two good things to say about it. It was an amazing opportunity for me, and I have to thank Mitax, Global Link, Carleton University, my professor, and the friends that I made during this experience. I enjoyed a lot working with cyber sickness and virtual reality because these are topics that are not very common in University of São Paulo, and I wanted to explore this area more. So, and for that, I enjoyed a lot. And I only was there for 3 months. So I had to organize my time to accomplish as many things as I wanted. And I also learned the importance of communication with Professor Robert Dieter. He showed how open he was for my ideas, which I appreciated a lot. And for Canada and Ottawa, which was the city that I was, I love the festivals because I was there before the pandemic. So there were so many festivals that I explored with the other interns. And one of them was the Lantern Light Festival, which I recommend. I don't know who has been, but I love that experience. And yeah, I felt I was embraced by a place full of diversity and history, and just wanted to explore more. And I hope one day to go back and explore even more.
Thank you so much, Fernanda, for sharing your experience and your research with us. Thank you. Next up, last but not least, I guess, is our next speaker, if Suxer is still around, Suxer Lazara Alfonso Garcia. Yes. PhD candidate. Are you with us? Awesome. Okay, great. Let me give a brief introduction. Suxer received her bachelor's degree in nuclear physics from the Higher Institute of Technologies and Applied Science, University of Havana, Cuba in 2015, and a diploma in medical physics in 2016. In 2018, she received a master's degree in nuclear physics from the same institute. She also was a part of a hospital residency and the nuclear physics department at the Higher Institute of Technologies and Applied Sciences. As a part of the master's program, she worked as a research fellow at Carleton University in the Radiation Physics Laboratory, and in collaboration with Ottawa Medical Physics Institute and the Ottawa Hospital Cancer Centre. In 2018, she started her PhD, now in a different location, Laboratory of Medical Information Processing, the French Institute of Health and Medical Research in France, working on dictionary learning approach for image reconstruction in cone beam computed tomography. The title of our talk today, though, is How Carleton Boosted My Career in 6 months. So we're really excited to hear all about it whenever you're ready, Suxer.
Yes, as you mentioned, I did my bachelor in Cuba in nuclear physics and my master also. Currently, I'm a PhD student in France. So if we can go to the next slide, please. As part of my master degree, I performed an internship in Canada as part of the Emerging Leaders in Americas program, ELAP, from September 2017 to February 2018. So I joined the Carleton Laboratory of Radiotherapy Physics, and I basically worked on Monte Carlo simulations for brachytherapy treatment. So brachytherapy treatment is a treatment where, in this case, I did it for vaginal cancer. So in this treatment, basically what we do is we introduce the source, a radioactive source inside of the patient to treat some cancers like rectum cancer or itself vaginal cancer. So what I did in this case, it was because in the clinic, basically what they do, they estimate, they calculate the doses and estimate the doses using just assuming that the patient itself, or the volume, is just a box of water. But in reality, we need to count for the tissue densities. Some applicator we use to shield part of the body, or part of the organs, or organs that are at risk, like the rectum in this case, which could be sensible. So what I did is modulating these applicators using an AGS bracket, which is it's a tool. We base it on AGS++, which is a class library on C++. Then I modeled this. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I modeled the nucleotron applicator, and I basically, if you can see, these are the type of applicator we have. With the blue region counts for the shielding, where you can avoid dose transmission over this part, and you can protect part of the patient. In this case, for example, for vaginal cancer, it could be the rectum that you can protect. So I did some this implementation, and I also added to the AGS Brachy tool developed in Carleton University in the lab. So I also compare with some a state of the art, I would say, and then we get good agreement for the applicator. And also we compare with some results obtained directly from the clinic, some experiments and from the clinic, for in this case just for that box of water to test at our algorithm. And then we performed these experiments in the Ottawa hospital. So it was a great experience for me. So if we go to the next slide, basically I want to talk pretty much because I mean the idea of my talk is how Carleton boosted my career. So in Ottawa, I will say my experience, it was my first time with snow, which it was something quite great for me. I mean, it was a bit cold because it was the whole winter, but it was quite fine. I had the chance to meet a lot of people. It's a multicultural country, and I love the experience there. I think this was actually the most important thing for me, learning English, or not learning English, but improved my English, because I'm coming from Spanish spoken country, so speaking English, it was a bit tricky for me. And I learned a lot, I improved a lot, and I became, I mean, more confident speaking. And also it was a real honor for me being part of the Carleton Laboratory of Radiation Physics, because it's a faculty members are very good. They are amazing. They publish a lot of paper. They've got amazing results, and they are well known in the community. And I will say that because of this experience in Carleton, I had the chance, or I wouldn't say it was the key point, but I wouldn't say it was the thing what they accept me in this PhD, but it was a key point, because during my interview for the PhD, I spoke, of course, about all my degrees, about all my studies, but they focused pretty much on what did you do in Carleton? How was your experience in Carleton? How was your experience in that lab? And actually, they were more interested on that, and I think it was the thing that boosted my career, pretty much my internship in Canada as part of the eLab. I think it's quite short, but I that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. If you got any question, you can reach me, please.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your experience and how it's affected you so positively. I think that's what people are interested to hear about. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. So we have a bit of time now where we can ask questions individually to the panelists, or if you want to ask a question of the whole group, feel free to pop that into the Q&A, and those are going to get sent to me, and I'm able to read your question for you. There have been, I have some questions, and I have a couple that have been popping up, so I'll begin, and then don't be shy, please, as you're listening, if some question pops up, feel free to add it to our discussion. So maybe we'll start. There was a question in the chat from Yvonne to Gustavo. How did your experience at Carleton influence your research?
Let's see. Thanks, Rooster. Let's see. How did it influence my research? I couldn't have done it without my research because, being apart from my co-supervisor who is really in touch with these things would be very hard. I mean, the point of the project was to really see if I could do it in such a short amount of time and put it into my master's thesis. And I could focus there because I was there alone, and that was my only goal, to actually break the crypto system I proposed. So, and of course I was next to my supervisor, and well, I would have had a good place to do it if it wasn't for the lockdown, but even nonetheless it was good. It was a calm place and all of that, and I could do it in a more focused way. So I mean, it was pivotal to my research. And as I said before, then after that it came the PhD admission, so there was that too. So I mean, it was really, really pivotal.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have a question for Mirja. So in your work, it seems like, or in your internship, it seems like you really had to translate in a way between two languages, the math to the applied engineering. And so I'm wondering what that experience was like. And if it's continued in your research. It sounds like you're doing very focused applied stuff, but you need to have these conversations and learn from these really fundamental mathematicians. So how do you bridge that? How do you translate those two research languages?
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes it wasn't always easy. I have to admit that. But yeah, when I first arrived, I heard all those different mathematical words, and I tried to grasp the ones that were important and look them up all the time just to make sense out of them. But after a while, you get used to hearing them, and then you can, if you are able to put them in sequence and really put the puzzle together. Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm coming from that kind of bridge background already, because I have a bachelor's in industrial engineering, which was already this bridge between engineering and management, where I had to communicate that as well. So it's not the first time I'm experiencing that, but yeah, it can be a big challenge. I agree.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's not a language, you expect to go on an internship and you have to translate between languages, but now it's also the research different languages. So I thought that was really interesting. Great.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So I have a question for Fernanda. So your research, the virtual reality, the fact that people, there's movement leads to the cyber sickness, but how important is the movement, the experience of movement, to the experience of virtual reality to really feel immersed? Is that needed?
Yeah, there's a really conflict with that, because you try to make the user feel as much immersed in the virtual reality so that he can feel like he is really experienced, like going into a roller coaster and all, for example. But meanwhile, while we try to make it immersive, there's also the problem of he feeling sick a lot faster. So for example, if he wants to jump, and he feels more sick than if he just walks a bit.
That's super interesting. It seems like it's a challenge because you want to have some sense of feeling like you're in there, but too much is going to impact the experience negatively. Yes. So that's really interesting to have to try to balance that. So thank you for that. Great. And then I do have a question for Suxer about the research, the next steps to getting to the clinic, for example. So you mentioned about how, the research is looking at imagining us as a box of water, right? And so you have to keep those assumptions in mind that that's not really true. How far away is this this sort of technology from being able to be used in the clinic? How many more steps do we need before you'll be able to be testing on people?
Well, in general, I think these applicators, they're already being used for in the clinic for people, but still they assume in the clinic that they have, for the calculation, they have a box of words. So the improvement now, it has to be actually in the software. So we need to improve the software to make sure that we're calculating very well the doses, because that's actually important. Because especially those organs that are at risk, we're not taking care of them when we are using those calculation with the box of water. So I think the step now, it's in the software itself. So we are working on that. Well, right now, actually, as part of my PhD, I'm actually doing something different, image reconstruction for those calculation. But okay, I think when I did it in Canada, I was quite involved in that. And actually, that was part of my master degree. I put it in my master thesis and it was quite fine.
That's
so
excellent.
The experience was amazing.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, that makes sense that, it's being used, but maybe we're not really understanding it. And so we need this missing piece to get the software side. So that makes perfect sense. That's great. Okay, let's see, we still have a little bit of time. I do have a question for Gustavo. I didn't get to ask my question for Gustavo. You learned about you built the system and then you broke the system, right? You say, okay, we can't use the system because I found this fatal flaw. How does that help you build the next system, the better system? What did you learn from that process that you can apply to the next level?
We know that we can't point a finger at randomness and say you should be less random. I mean, randomness is a very, very delicate thing. There has been a lot of literature in Rainbow specifically that people try to add some structure to the scheme. I mean, let's fix this. Let's use a system of polynomials with specific coefficients that translates to a matrix with specific coefficients too. But while I try to flee away from the structure of the private key of the matrices, the systems, I actually introduced another kind of structure into something else. So I mean, things really have to be random, really have to be non-predictive to actually. I think the security is very, very attached to that. So that was a key point. You can't just introduce some fixed point into the whole crypto system and then hope it still works, because I mean, it probably won't, at least not in my case. So randomness is really, really important. I think that was the conclusion I wrote in my thesis, that you can just expect to add structure and then not have you hit it back later.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's sad to break something you've made, but if you've learned something, then that helps you make the next thing. It's better.
Yeah, it's pretty common in cryptography.
I think so. I think that's part of the fun too, I'm sure, is to try to take it apart once you've built it. So that's fantastic. I have a question now. I'm just going to quickly check to make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions from the chat, but if just for every panelist, if one at a time, we could do it in the order of the presentations, can just answer this question. If someone now is interested in doing some kind of a research exchange, some kind of international mobility as part of their research experience, and they're tentative about it, what advice would you give them if they're feeling that maybe this isn't the right thing for me to do? I should just focus, stay put where I am, and just spend all my time doing my project. What advice would you give based on your experience? I mean, we'll start with Mirja.
Okay. I do understand that some people might have some hesitation about that, but at the same time, it is such a great opportunity to go out there, to dive into a different culture, to get to know other people, to extend your research network, because you never know. Maybe you're going to get to know those kind of people that are going to boost your career, that you're going to get a step further. So I think that's also important to always keep in mind if you want to go maybe towards a becoming a professor or something like that. So yeah, I would always recommend it. I have never made any real bad experiences where I would look back, oh no, why did I do that? Yeah, it can be scary at the beginning, but so for me, it has been worth it all the time. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. How about you, Gustavo? What would you say to someone who's hesitating? They think they should not be spending time on an exchange and just focusing where they are on the work they're doing?
I would just give them a personal example. Even just being stuck in another country, it makes a difference. I mean, you're there to work, and even the little things can help. You can practice your English, and then you can live with other people, with other cultures. I mean, it's going to be productive in some way. It helps to burst the bubble a little bit. I mean, I did not try so many times before I got this award. So I was one of those people that I just like, I have to finish my research, and then I have to finish this chapter of the book. Then in my PhD or something like that, I should do something different next. But no, things can be different while you're doing your this phase of your life or something like that. I mean, in the middle of a master's, I got it. So well, the point is, it can be productive in every way, even the smallest things, which you think it won't help, but in the end it will. I think it should be something that should be thought of for every student that has the opportunity. I mean, and there are a lot of opportunities, as I mean, and Dr. Sylvie said in the previous session. Colton, for example, has a lot of programs and all that. So, I mean, it's always worth trying. And, well, sometimes we'll get it. And then I don't think it's going to be bad in the whole scheme of things.
Perfect. This is important coming from you because you've had the lockdown experience. So the fact that you're still positive about it, I think speaks a lot about how valuable the experience could be, even under maybe non-ideal circumstances. Fernanda, what do you think about that advice for someone who's hesitating about the idea of an exchange or an international experience?
I think if you have the opportunity, you should try and see. And if you're in the internship already and you're feeling like not enthusiastic about it, you should. This happened to me, and one advice that I gave received, I think it is important to share as well. Wait 1 week and ask the same question, because a lot can change about how you view the city, your current situation. Sometimes you discover something new, and when you ask this question again in another period of time, you may find that you're not certain about something, like, oh, I don't fit here. And then if you're still unsure, then wait another week and ask again, and you keep finding yourself amazed by the place. I think, at least for my experience, I had this thing.
That's really valuable advice, actually, because I'm sure it's shocking for everybody at the very beginning, right? It's a new place, yes, and new people, and you don't know what to expect. And maybe the initial, you've heard all these great things about doing this kind of an exchange, but then you're not feeling that. So maybe give it a time, give yourself a chance to get acclimatized, and then you'll find that the experience will improve for you. That's really good advice. Thanks for sharing that, Fernanda. And then last but not least, Suxer, you were very positive about your how you think that this experience boosted your career. So I'd love to hear your advice for someone who's on the fence about it.
Yes, I feel like everyone should do it. Especially if you're doing master or PhD, you should go abroad, because it's amazing, the experience. You learn a lot, but also you learn how other groups work, because basically sometimes you are inside of your group, you see how is your I think how is your supervisor, but now you will move, you will find another supervisor, or at least not another supervisor, but you will be advised for someone else. You will see different criterion, and then you can always see the difference, and you can always learn from both. And yeah, you get out of the bubble, as I said. And also the experience with the language is amazing, especially if you're coming from a country where English is not your mother language, and we know research is in English pretty much, so you will learn a lot. So And the other thing is, yeah, for me, in my case, it was amazing for the PhD, but yeah, definitely boosted to your career a lot, because you probably when you do this, you join to groups that they are super, I would say, they are very good in the field, so that's always boost your career. So my advice is, if you haven't done it yet, just try to find one and go ahead and do it at least for 3 months, 6 months. Is always a good experience, so just go and do it. And
Very good
yeah.
advice. Yes. And I think, yeah, you're right. I think the profile, right? Taking on the profile of another group just enriches your experience, improves your CV, right?
Yes.
It makes everything better. So it's worth a risk maybe to go out there and open yourself up to new experience and seeing how other people are doing the work that you're interested in. That's fantastic. Well, you know what? We're pretty much out of time. I really want to thank everybody for, sharing. It's not easy to give these kinds of presentations, so I appreciate that you shared what you were doing your research on with all of us in such a way that, we could all understand, which is also very difficult to do sometimes. So I appreciate that, and that you shared your insights on how positive these experiences have been for you, and hopefully others are listening and will be able to learn from that experience and also take that chance and try to do this sort of thing during their time as researchers. So thank you all very much. Thanks everyone for your questions and for listening. And I think this really ends our session, but it doesn't end the conversation. Please feel free to continue and discussing these sorts of things. And there are people at Carleton that you can reach out to, and their Twitter handle is shown if you want to continue the conversation online. So thank you very, very much, everyone, and have a great evening.